Jake Morrison stood by the big window of the space station, looking out at the colorful gas clouds that swirled in the darkness of space. The view was beautiful, but Jake felt tired and angry inside. He had been working here for 3 years now, representing Earth and all of humanity on the Galactic Council. It was supposed to be the greatest honor a human could receive, but lately it felt more like a punishment. The space station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. Different alien species lived and worked here together, or at least they were supposed to work together. Jake had learned that working together was much harder than it sounded, especially when some aliens thought they were better than everyone else. Behind Jake, the meeting room was full of noise and arguments. The council was meeting again, just like they did every day, to discuss problems across the galaxy. Today they were talking about the Kepler colony, and Jake's chest felt tight with worry every time he thought about it. Kepler-442b was a mining planet where 30,000 people lived and worked. Most of them were human families who had moved there 5 years ago to dig for rare metals that powered spaceships. But 3 days ago, the planet started shaking. The ground cracked open, hot gas shot up from deep underground, and the scientists said the whole planet might explode soon. Jake and his team had a plan to save everyone. Earth had 20 big rescue ships that could fly faster than light. They could reach Kepler in just 2 days and bring everyone home safely. The ships were ready to go, sitting in Earth's orbit with fuel tanks full and crews waiting for orders. All the council had to do was say yes, but the council was not saying yes. They were not saying no either. They were talking and talking and talking. The meeting room had a big round table where all the different alien species sat. The Xanthari looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs. Their skin was dark green and covered in sharp scales. They thought they were the smartest and strongest species in the galaxy, and their leader Vexai spoke in a voice that sounded like rocks grinding together. The Meridians were tall and thin with gray skin that looked like rubber. They had big, black eyes and long fingers that moved constantly while they talked. They loved making deals and counting money, and they always wanted to discuss every tiny detail before making any decisions. The Vorth were the strangest ones. They looked like walking crystals that sparkled with different colors. When they spoke, their voices sounded like music, but they talked so slowly that Jake sometimes fell asleep waiting for them to finish a sentence. There were other species too, but these 3 groups controlled most of the votes on the council. Doctor Lisa Parker sat next to Jake at the human section of the table. She was a scientist who studied alien life forms, and she was also his good friend. Lisa had short brown hair and wore glasses that were always sliding down her nose when she got excited. Right now she looked frustrated and tired. "We have been talking about this for 3 days, Lisa said, standing up and pushing her glasses back up. "The rescue ships are ready. The crews are trained. We can save all those people if we just give the order now." Vexai turned his big lizard head toward Lisa and made a sound like a growl. "Dr. Parker, your species is still young and does not understand how the council works. We cannot make big decisions quickly. There are rules to follow and procedures to complete." "What procedures?" Jake asked, trying to keep his voice calm. "People are going to die." "What procedure is more important than saving lives?" "The Meridian." Representative Korth waved his long gray fingers in the air. "We must consider the cost, the legal issues, the insurance problems. What if some ships are lost during the rescue? Who pays for that? What if some colonists do not want to leave their homes? These questions need answers." Jake felt his face getting hot with anger. He had heard these same arguments for 3 days now, while people on Kepler sent more and more desperate messages asking for help. Lisa sat back down and opened her datapad. "I have the latest report from Kepler," she said. "The earthquakes are getting stronger. The scientists there think they have maybe 1 more day before the whole southern continent breaks apart. If that happens, the mining stations will fall into the lava, and everyone there will be trapped." She looked around the table at all the alien faces. "1 day, that's all the time we have left." The crystal-like Vorth delegate began to speak in their slow, musical voice. This council has existed for 1,000 years. In all that time, we have never made a decision without proper discussion and analysis. If we change our ways now, we set a dangerous example. Jake wanted to scream. He wanted to jump on the table and shake all these aliens until they understood. Instead, he took a deep breath and tried one more time. "Look," he said, "I understand that you have traditions and rules. But sometimes things happen so fast that the old ways don't work. Sometimes you have to trust people to do the right thing, even if it's not exactly by the book. The human rescue fleet has saved people before. We know what we're doing." Vex High's eyes glowed red, which Jake had learned meant the Zenthari was getting angry. "Your species has been part of this council for only 15 years. We have been making decisions since before your planet had spaceflight. Do not tell us how to govern." The argument went on and on. Jake watched the clock on the wall tick away precious minutes while the aliens argued about laws and procedures and traditions. Every minute that passed meant the people on Kepler were closer to death. Finally, Jake's communication device buzzed with an emergency message. He looked at the screen and felt his heart sink. The message was from Kepler Colony, but it was just static and broken words. Then the signal died completely. The room went quiet. Everyone knew what that meant. Jake stood up slowly and looked around the table at all the alien faces. Some looked sad, some looked guilty, but most just looked uncomfortable, like they wanted to forget this had ever happened. 30,000 people, Jake said quietly. 30,000 men, women, and children. They're all dead now because you couldn't make a simple decision. He reached into his pocket and pulled out his emergency communicator, the one that connected directly to Earth's government. The aliens watched him with surprise as he activated it. "This is Jake Morrison," he said into the device. "Priority Alpha message to President Hayes, pack everything. We're coming home." Helen Carter was sleeping when her communication device started beeping loudly in her bedroom. She rolled over and looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m, Earth time. As the main human ambassador to the Galactic Council, Helen was used to getting emergency calls, but this felt different. She picked up the device and saw Jake Morrison's face on the screen. His eyes were red and tired, and his voice sounded flat and cold. "Helen, I need you to wake up President Hayes right now. Tell him I'm sending a Priority Alpha message. We're leaving the council, all of us, tonight." Helen sat up in bed suddenly, wide awake. Priority Alpha was the highest emergency level, used only for threats to Earth itself. "Jake, what happened? Are we under attack?" "Kepler Colony is gone," Jake said. 30,000 people are dead because the council spent 3 days arguing about paperwork. "I'm done, Helen. We're all done. Get everyone ready to come home." The screen went dark and Helen stared at it for a moment. Then she jumped out of bed and started making phone calls. 20 minutes later, she was sitting in the White House Situation Room with President Daniel Hayes and the Emergency Council. President Hayes was a tall man with gray hair who usually stayed calm during any crisis, but tonight he looked shocked and angry. "Are you sure about this, Helen?" he asked. "Leaving the Galactic Council means giving up everything we've worked for, all our trade agreements, our research projects, our hope of joining the bigger galactic community." Helen had worked with aliens for 10 years. She had learned their languages, studied their cultures, and tried to build friendships across the stars. But she also remembered every insult, every time the aliens had treated humans like children, every good idea that had been ignored just because it came from the young species. "Mr. President," she said, "we've been trying to prove ourselves to them for 15 years. We've given them our best technology, our brightest minds, our hardest workers, and what do we get back? They let 30,000 of our people die because they couldn't be bothered to make a fast decision." The president was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. "What do you need?" "Everything," Helen said. "I need every human in council space to pack up and come home. I need it done fast and quiet. No announcements, no explanations, no giving them a chance to argue with us or try to change our minds." The emergency council went to work immediately. Within an hour, secret messages were going out to every human facility, ship, and outpost in the galaxy. The message was simple: pack everything that belongs to Earth and come home now. Commander Ryan Bell got his message while he was eating breakfast on the human research station orbiting Proxima Centauri. The station was huge, with laboratories, living quarters, and docking bays for 50 ships. Over 2,000 humans worked there, studying new forms of life and working with alien scientists on joint projects. Ryan had been expecting this day for a long time. He had watched the aliens treat his people like servants, taking credit for human discoveries and acting like they were doing Earth a favor by letting humans participate in their research. He activated the station's communication system and spoke to everyone at once. Attention all personnel. This is Commander Bell. We have received orders from Earth to evacuate this station immediately. All human staff should pack personal belongings only. Everything else stays here. The humans moved like a well-trained military unit. They had practiced emergency evacuations before, but this time it was real. Scientists downloaded their research data onto portable drives. Engineers shut down the systems they had built. Maintenance workers gathered their tools. The alien scientists on the station were confused. They kept asking questions that the humans politely refused to answer. "Where are you going?" asked Dr. Vorthak, a crystal being who had worked with humans for 5 years. "When will you return?" "We won't be returning," Ryan said simply. "Good luck with your research." On the other side of the galaxy, Dr. Amy Foster was working late in her laboratory on the Joint Medical Research Station. She was Earth's best expert on alien diseases, and she had spent 7 years developing treatments that had saved millions of alien lives. When she got the evacuation message, she looked around her lab at all the equipment and research data. Amy had been working on a cure for Xanthari scale rot, a disease that was killing thousands of the lizard-like aliens every year. She was close to a breakthrough, maybe just weeks away from a complete cure. For a moment, she thought about staying to finish the work. Then she remembered how the Xanthari representative had called humans too emotional to be real scientists. She remembered how they had never thanked her for the dozens of treatments she had already developed for them. She started packing. Engineer Pete Wilson was deep underground on the planet Vega Prime, working on the quantum communication arrays that let different species talk to each other instantly across the galaxy. The arrays were entirely human technology, designed by Pete's team and built with Earth materials. Pete had always been proud of the communication system it had brought the galaxy closer together and made trade and diplomacy much easier for everyone. But he had also gotten tired of aliens acting like they owned the technology, even though they had no idea how it actually worked. When he got the evacuation order, Pete began shutting down the arrays one by one. His alien co-workers watched in confusion as the massive machines went dark. "What are you doing?" asked Jorthik, a Meridian technician. "These systems serve the whole galaxy. You cannot just turn them off." "Watch me," Pete said, pulling the main power cables out of the control panel all across the galaxy. The same scene was happening over and over. Human doctors packed their medical equipment. Human teachers gathered their educational materials. Human diplomats cleaned out their offices. Human soldiers loaded their weapons onto transport ships. The aliens noticed that something unusual was happening, but most of them weren't worried. The Xanthari thought the humans were just reorganizing their work assignments like they did sometimes. The Meridians assumed it was some kind of efficiency improvement program. The Vorth didn't think about it at all, since they moved so slowly that human activity always looked frantic to them. Only a few aliens realized something serious was going on. Kestara was a young Altarian diplomat who had always been kind to humans. She had short blue fur and big yellow eyes, and she was one of the few aliens who treated humans as equals instead of junior partners. Kestara watched the humans packing up their embassy office and felt worried. "Jake," she said to Morrison, "what is happening? Are you all being reassigned?" Jake looked at the young alien who had been his friend for 2 years. He felt bad about not telling her the truth, but orders were orders. "We're going home, Kestara," he said. Take care of yourself. Within 3 days, every human ship, station, and facility in council space was empty. The humans had taken their people, their personal belongings, and all the technology that legally belonged to Earth. They left behind empty buildings, shut down machines, and a galaxy that was about to discover how much it had depended on human work and human ideas. The last human ship jumped to hyperspace, just as the Galactic Council was calling an emergency meeting to figure out where everyone had gone. Ambassador Vexhai walked into the council meeting room feeling pleased with himself. 3 days had passed since the humans had mysteriously disappeared, and the big lizard-like alien thought this was the best thing that could have happened. The room felt cleaner somehow, without all those noisy, pushy humans asking questions and making suggestions all the time. He sat down in his chair and looked at the empty human section of the round table. Good, he thought. Maybe now the council could get back to doing things the proper way. Without those young species always trying to rush everything, the meeting started normally. The different alien species talked about trade agreements and border disputes, just like they always did. But after about an hour, things started going wrong. Korth, the gray-skinned Meridian representative, was trying to open his daily economic reports when his computer screen showed an error message. He tried again, pressing the buttons harder this time, but the same message kept appearing. I cannot access the market analysis data, Korth said, his long fingers tapping nervously on the table. The system says the information is not available. Kastara, the young Altarian diplomat with blue fur, was sitting at her small desk near the back of the room. She was responsible for gathering intelligence reports from across the galaxy, a job that usually took her about an hour each morning. But today, her computer screens were mostly empty. Sir, she said quietly to the council leader, I think we have a problem. The daily reports from the Outer Rim territories are missing. So are the updates from the mining colonies and the trade route monitoring stations? Vexhai turned his big reptilian head toward her. What do you mean missing? How can reports be missing? Kastara's yellow eyes looked worried. The humans were responsible for collecting data from most of the frontier worlds. Their automated monitoring systems sent information back to the main databases every day. But the systems are not working anymore. Well, turn them back on, Vexhai said impatiently. I cannot, sir. The humans took the control codes with them when they left. And the monitoring stations themselves appear to be shut down? Uncomfortable. Silence fell over the room. Other aliens began checking their own computer systems and finding similar problems. The Vorth delegate, a tall crystal being named Porth, discovered that the agricultural planning programs were not working. The Rigelian trade minister found that his shipping route calculations were giving wrong answers. But the real crisis started when Councillor Porth of the Vorth Collective suddenly made a sound like breaking glass and fell over. The crystal being's left arm had cracked down the middle, and bright blue liquid was leaking out. Medical emergency! Kastara shouted, running toward the injured alien. Someone call the medical bay? The medical team arrived quickly, pushing a cart full of equipment. But when they tried to treat Porth's injury, they discovered a serious problem. All their best medical machines had been designed and built by humans. The machines were still there, but they were not working properly. Dr. Nexel, the head of the medical bay, was a thin, gray alien with 4 arms. He had worked with human doctors for many years, but he had never paid attention to how the human machines actually worked. He had always assumed that the humans would be there to fix any problems. The trauma scanner is giving strange readings, Dr. Nexel said, his 4 hands moving frantically over the controls. The tissue regenerator is not responding to commands. I need Dr. Parker's team to help with this. Dr. Parker is gone, Kastara said quietly. All the humans are gone, Dr. Nexel stared at her. Gone? What do you mean, gone? Where did they go? We do not know. They just left 3 days ago and took all their equipment with them. Dr. Nexel looked down at Porth, who was making weak musical sounds of pain. The crystal being needed immediate treatment, but without the properly functioning human medical equipment, Dr. Nexel was not sure he could save Porth's life. While the medical crisis was happening in the council chambers, similar Problems were starting to appear all across the galaxy. In the Xanthari Empire, Admiral Krex was trying to plan a military exercise. When he discovered that his fleet's tactical computers were not working correctly, the computers could still calculate basic things like ship positions and fuel consumption, but all the advanced strategic planning programs were offline. These programs had been written by human military analysts, and they required constant updates and maintenance that only the humans knew how to provide. Admiral Krex tried to run a simple battle simulation, something his computers had done thousands of times before. But instead of the detailed tactical analysis he expected, the computer just showed a message that said, "Error, strategic assessment module not found." On the trading planet of Zarian, merchant Captain Vorthak was trying to plan his next cargo run when he found that all the navigation beacons along the major trade routes were giving wrong information. The beacons were supposed to guide ships safely through hyperspace, but many of them were now broadcasting old data or no data at all. Vorthak tried to call the beacon maintenance service, but he learned that the service was run entirely by human technicians who had disappeared along with everyone else. Without accurate navigation data, traveling through hyperspace became much more dangerous. Back in the council chambers, the problems kept getting worse. The communication systems that connected different parts of the galaxy were starting to fail. The economic prediction models that helped plan interstellar trade were giving crazy results. Even the simple things, like the air circulation systems in the space station, were beginning to malfunction. Vexhai stood up and looked around the room at all the broken equipment and confused aliens. For the first time in his long life, the proud Xanthari warrior felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. How is this possible? He asked, how could one species be involved in so many different systems? Kestara had been working frantically at her computer, trying to understand the scope of the problem. What she found made her feel sick to her stomach. "Sir," she said, her voice shaking, "I have been checking the personnel records for all major galactic systems. The humans were not just participants in our civilization, they were maintaining it." She called up a holographic display that showed the galaxy with thousands of red dots marking failed systems. They designed our communication networks, they built our navigation systems. They created the economic models we use for trade. They maintain the medical equipment that keeps us healthy. They even designed the life support systems on most of our space stations. The room fell completely silent as the full meaning of Kestara's words sank in. For 15 years, while the other species had been treating humans like junior partners, the humans had quietly become the engineers, technicians, and problem solvers who kept galactic civilization running, and now they were gone, Vexhai felt. His scales turning pale, which happened when Xanthari experienced extreme stress. "We need to contact them immediately," he said. "Offer them whatever they want to come back." But when they tried to send a message to Earth, they discovered yet another problem. The quantum communication arrays that allowed instant contact across the galaxy were offline. The humans had built those systems too, and they had taken their knowledge with them. The galaxy's most advanced civilizations were suddenly cut off from each other, sitting in the dark and slowly realizing that they had made the biggest mistake in their history. They had let the humans walk away. 1 week after the humans disappeared, 3 entire star systems went completely dark. Admiral Krex of the Xanthari Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the emergency reports flooding in from across his territory. His green scales were turning gray with stress, something that only happened when his Xanthari was facing a truly hopeless situation. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we have lost all contact with the Rigel system, the Vega colonies, and the mining operations in the Kepler sector." Krex clenched his clawed hands into fists. "What about the backup communication systems?" "They are not working either, sir. The primary arrays were built by humans, and the backup systems used human-designed components. Without maintenance, they are failing one by one." The problems had started small. A few navigation beacons had stopped working. Some computers had begun giving wrong information. But as the days passed, The failures spread like a disease throughout the galaxy. Every system that humans had touched, every piece of technology they had improved, every process they had optimized was slowly breaking down on the planet Zarian Prime. Merchant Captain Vorthak was trying to understand why his cargo shipments kept getting lost. His transport ships were some of the fastest in the galaxy, but lately they had been arriving at the wrong planets or not arriving at all. "The navigation computers are giving us bad coordinates," his pilot explained. "The star charts are old, and the hyperspace route calculations are wrong. We tried to fly to the Altair system yesterday and ended up 3 sectors away near a black hole." Vorthak felt his 4 stomachs churning with worry. His shipping business was falling apart, and he was not the only one. Across the galaxy, trade routes that had been reliable for decades were becoming dangerous death traps. Ships were getting lost in hyperspace, running out of fuel in empty regions of space, or crash landing on planets that were supposed to be. Millions of miles away, the humans had not just maintained the navigation systems. They had constantly updated them, adjusting for changes in gravitational fields, solar wind patterns, and the movement of stars. Without those updates, the navigation data became more wrong every day, but the navigation problems were nothing compared to what was happening with food production. On the agricultural world of Series 7, farm manager Jektar was watching his crops die in the fields. The automated farming systems that had fed billions of beings across the galaxy were producing smaller and smaller harvests. "The soil analysis programs are not working correctly," his assistant reported. "The machines are giving the wrong amounts of fertilizer and water. Some fields are getting too much, others are getting too little." Jektar had been farming for 30 years, but he had always relied on the human-designed optimization programs to tell him what to plant, when to plant it, and how to care for it. The programs had analyzed weather patterns, soil conditions, and market demand to produce the perfect crops every time. Now the programs were failing, and Jektar discovered that he did not actually know how to farm without them. His crops were dying, and people across his sector were starting to go hungry. The economic problems were just as bad. On the financial center world of Nexus Station, Trade Minister Korth was watching his computer screens show numbers that made no sense. The galactic economy, which had been stable for over a century, was collapsing faster than anyone thought possible. "The market prediction models are giving impossible results," his assistant said. "Yesterday they said that grain prices would go up by 3,000%. Today they are saying that starship fuel will become completely worthless. The algorithms are completely broken." Korth had built his entire career on understanding galactic economics, but he was learning that most of his knowledge had actually come from human-designed computer programs. The humans had created mathematical models that could predict how supply and demand would change based on thousands of different factors. Without those models, galactic trade was becoming chaos. Stock markets were crashing. Currency exchange rates were swinging wildly from day to day. Entire planets were running out of basic supplies because no one knew what to order or where to send it. In the Xanthari military headquarters, Admiral Krex was dealing with his own disasters. His empire was the most powerful military force in the galaxy, with thousands of warships and millions of soldiers. But without human-designed tactical computers, his forces were becoming helpless. "Admiral," his intelligence officer reported, "the border colonies are reporting attacks from pirate fleets. The automatic defense systems are not responding, and our patrol ships cannot coordinate their response." Krex pulled up a tactical display that showed red warning lights blinking across his empire's borders. Small groups of raiders and pirates, who had never dared to challenge Xanthari forces before, were now attacking colonies and trade ships with confidence. "How many ships have we lost?" Krex asked. 17 this week, sir." The crews report that their weapon targeting systems are not working properly. The tactical analysis computers keep giving them the wrong firing solutions. For decades, Xanthari military doctrine had relied on superior technology and computer-assisted tactics. Human programmers had written the software that made Xanthari fleets unstoppable. Without that software, Xanthari ships were just big, slow targets, but the worst crisis was happening on the Council space station itself. The life support systems that kept the air breathable and the temperature comfortable were starting to fail. Counselor Porth, who had been injured a week ago, was still in the medical bay because the doctors could not figure out how to operate their own equipment without human assistance. Kastara had been working day and night, trying to coordinate emergency repairs across the galaxy. But every time she fixed one problem, 3 more appeared. The galactic civilization that had seemed so advanced and stable was falling apart like a house made of cards. How could this happen? Vexai asked during another emergency meeting. How could we become so dependent on one species without even realizing it? Kastara looked up from her reports, her blue fur matted with exhaustion. Because we never paid attention to how things actually worked. We just assumed that if the humans were willing to do the boring maintenance jobs, we should let them. We thought we were being generous by giving them opportunities to serve us. She gestured at the chaos around them. But they were not serving us. They were holding our entire civilization together with their knowledge and their hard work. And, we never even said thank you. Vexai stared at the empty human section of the council chamber. The chairs looked so small compared to the seats designed for other species, but now he realized those small chairs had belonged to the most important beings in the room. We need to contact Earth immediately, he said. Send a diplomatic mission. Offer them anything they want. Full voting rights, resource-sharing agreements, leadership positions on important committees. Sir, Kastara said quietly, I have been trying to reach Earth for 3 days. The quantum communication arrays are still offline. Even if we could contact them, it would take our fastest ships 2 months to reach human space using conventional engines. Vexai felt something cold settle in his stomach. 2 months. In 2 months, how much more of galactic civilization would collapse? How many more people would die because critical systems had failed? For the first time in his life, the proud Xanthari warrior understood what humans must have felt like during those long years of being ignored and dismissed. He understood what it meant to be helpless, to need help desperately, and to realize that help might not be coming. The galaxy had learned to take human competence for granted. Now they were learning what life was like without it. 2 months had passed since the humans disappeared and the galaxy was dying. Ambassador Vexai stood on the bridge of his personal starship, looking out at the blue-green planet called Earth spinning slowly in the darkness of space. The journey here had taken 8 weeks using old-style faster-than-light engines, and every day of that journey had brought new reports of disaster from across the galaxy. Behind Vexai stood the other members of the emergency diplomatic mission. Korth, the Meridian trade representative, looked thin and worried. His gray skin had turned almost white from stress. Counselor Porth of the Vorth Collective had survived his medical crisis, but his crystal body was still cracked from the injury that could have been easily healed with working human medical equipment. Even Kastara was there, though she was no longer the cheerful young diplomat she had been 3 months ago. The blue-furred Altarian had aged years in just a few weeks, trying to coordinate emergency responses across a collapsing civilization. Are you sure they will even see us? Korth asked, his long fingers trembling slightly. After everything that has happened, after all the ways we treated them. Vexai did not answer immediately. He was thinking about the reports that had reached them during the long journey to Earth. The Rigel system had been completely abandoned, after life support failures killed millions. The Xanthari Empire was fighting a civil war because different military commanders could not coordinate with each other. Half the galaxy's food-producing worlds were experiencing famines because the agricultural systems had completely broken down. They have to see us, Vexai said finally. Because if they do not, our entire civilization will be dead within a year. The human space traffic control system guided their ship to a docking station orbiting Earth. Vexai was surprised by how calm and organized everything seemed. The space stations were clean and well-maintained. The ships moved in orderly patterns. The communication systems worked perfectly. It was like visiting a completely different galaxy. From the chaos they had left behind, a human escort met them at the docking bay and led them through the space station to a small shuttle. The escort was polite but not friendly. He answered their questions with simple yes and no responses and did not volunteer any information. The shuttle took them down to Earth's surface, to a city called Geneva. Vexai had visited Earth before, during the early days of human membership in the Galactic Council, but the planet looked different now. The city seemed larger and more advanced. New buildings reached toward the sky, and the streets buzzed with activity. Most importantly, everything worked. The transportation systems ran on time. The communication networks carried clear signals. The power grids provided steady electricity. Earth looked like a planet that was thriving, not struggling to survive like every other world in the galaxy. They were taken to a simple government building where President Daniel Hayes was waiting for them in a small conference room. The room had no fancy decorations or impressive technology, just a plain table and some chairs. Jake Morrison sat on the president's right side and Helen Carter sat on his left. Vexai barely recognized Jake Morrison. The human who had once seemed so eager to please, so desperate for alien approval, now looked calm and confident. His eyes were steady and showed no sign of the anxiety that had once made him speak too fast during council meetings. President Hayes gestured for the alien delegation to sit down. "Welcome to Earth," he said in a neutral voice. "I understand. You have something you want to discuss." Vexai cleared his throat and began the speech he had practiced during the long journey. "President Hayes, we come here today to acknowledge the terrible mistakes we have made. The Galactic Council has always valued the contributions of the human species, and we deeply regret any misunderstandings that may have occurred." President Hayes raised one eyebrow, but said nothing. Korth leaned forward eagerly. "We are prepared to offer humanity full voting rights on all council decisions," he said. "We can also provide access to our most advanced technologies and establish favorable trade agreements that will benefit your people greatly." Councillor Porth spoke in his slow, musical voice. "The Council recognizes that human expertise is valuable in many areas. We would be honored to have humans take leadership roles in technical committees and advisory positions." Vexai nodded enthusiastically. "We are even willing to consider making a human the next council leader, if that would encourage your people to return." The alien delegates sat back in their chairs, expecting President Hayes to show excitement or gratitude. Instead, the human leader was quiet for a long moment, looking at each of them with thoughtful eyes. Finally, President Hayes spoke. "For 15 years, humanity served on the Galactic Council. We offered our friendship, our knowledge, and our hard work to the galactic community. We tried to be good partners and reliable allies." He paused and looked directly at Vexai. "When 30,000 human colonists faced death on Kepler 442b, we begged you to let us save them. We had ships ready, crews trained, and the ability to rescue every single person. All we needed was your permission." Vexai felt his scales turning pale as President Hayes continued. "But you chose to debate. You chose to follow procedures. You chose bureaucracy over human lives. And those 30,000 people died while you argued about paperwork." Jake Morrison spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "That choice showed us who you really are," he said. "And it showed us who we were becoming by trying so hard to please you." Helen Carter opened a folder and pulled out some documents. "While you have been dealing with the collapse of your systems, we have been exploring new regions of space. We have made contact with 7 new species who treat us as equals from the first day. We have established colonies on 43 new worlds. We have built a civilization based on mutual respect and cooperation." President Hayes stood up and walked to the window, where Earth's blue oceans sparkled in the sunlight. "We learned something important during our time away from the Council. We do not need your approval to be great. We do not need your permission to help people in need. We have been innovating and exploring for thousands of years before we met you, and we will continue long after you are gone." Vexai felt desperate. "But without human assistance, our entire civilization is collapsing. Billions of beings will die if our systems continue to fail. President Hayes turned back to face the alien delegation. You had 15 years to treat us as equals. You had 15 years to listen to our ideas and value our contributions. You had 15 years to show us the respect that partners deserve. He sat back down and looked each alien in the eye. Instead, you treated us like servants, you took credit for our work, you ignored our warnings. And when we needed you to act quickly to save lives, you chose protocol over people. Jake Morrison leaned forward. You made your choice on Kepler 442b, now you get to live with the consequences. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Korth spoke in a shaking voice. What can we do? How can we convince you to help us? President Hayes shook his head slowly. Nothing. There is nothing you can do. We gave you our trust once, and you broke it. We will not make that mistake again. Helen Carter gathered up her documents. This meeting is over. You will be escorted back to your ship and given safe passage out of human space. Do not return. As the alien delegates were led away, Vexai looked back one last time at the humans who had once seemed so eager to please. Now they looked like what they had always been, a proud, capable species that had finally remembered their own worth. The galaxy would have to learn to survive without humanity. And from the reports reaching Earth every day, it was not going very well.